Morning.
Morning, Totto.
How's it going? What are we talking about today, Ryan?
Responsibility and accountability.
Responsibility and accountability.
Welcome to the Leaders Cafe, where leaders discuss the latest trends and issues in leadership, team building, and the future of organizations. Each week, we'll bring you engaging conversations with successful leaders who will share their insights, experiences, and strategies for creating effective teams, navigating change, and driving innovation. So sit back, relax, and join us for a virtual cup of coffee at the Leaders Cafe.
I am pumped today.
Are you?
Yeah.
Because of accountability and responsibility?
Because of accountability and responsibility. Absolutely. Today, I'm helping out with a class that's on talking about project management. So after I'm done with this, I'm going to run down there, get some learning on. So that's always stoked for me to, for my continuous education, which we thought we were talking about today, but I screwed up last week by reading the wrong box, and I screwed Brian up by having him prepare for continuous learning. But yet we're talking about accountability and responsibility, which I am taking accountability for saying the wrong things last week.
Well, and I take the responsibility to give the best show I can, regardless of the
topic. So yeah, I am the International Association of Emergency Managers. This conference kicks off, starts technically on Sunday. There's some pre-conference stuff starting tomorrow. So, and it's hosted in my neighborhood, in my town, in my region, not necessarily my town, in the city of Long Beach. So I'll be hanging out in Long Beach this week. So if you guys are listening and are going to be in the area, please come down to the conference. I'd love to see you. And I'd like to maybe grab a cup of coffee with you. I don't have my coffee with me right now, so this is my first Leaders Cafe without actually drinking coffee.
I think you should do push-ups. Moving on.
So what is responsibility and accountability?
Accountability is holding oneself to be accountable for the things they should be doing. Responsibility isn't what you asked. Yes, responsibility is me taking on a task. It's more of an inner motivation. How can I explain that? Jump in here, Todd. Help me out.
Responsibility. I go this way. Accountability is like when something is going poorly, right? And you say, hey, I have the accountability for this. It's my team, even if you didn't do it, like even if you weren't the person in the room when things are going down, and things went sideways, you as a leader are still accountable for the actions of your team.
Well, and if things go good, you're accountable for rewarding your team for those outcomes.
Absolutely.
And what I was trying to say, responsibility is more of an internal thing. You're going to accomplish the task because it was assigned to you, or you're going to accomplish whatever was given to you or you are in charge of.
Yeah, I think, and going back with that, I think responsibility is more task oriented in my mind than accountability is.
I think duty to perform was kind of where I was going with responsibility.
Yeah. I think that's like task oriented, right? You have you like, hey, you're responsible for taking care of this,
right?
You're responsible. You're accountable if things go sideways. And you know what? I think we're starting off on a negative here, because I don't think accountability is always a negative trait.
Most definitely.
Right? Yeah. So I think you could be accountable. You're accountable for good things that occurred, right? Your team does well and you pick the right people. If you think about, like, I know you hate this, sports ball. If you think about like baseball, for instance, Texas Rangers last night won the World Series. Congratulations for all those Texas Rangers that are out there. Congratulations on that World Series win. Big thing, right? The manager of that team is accountable for the wins and is accountable for the losses. And that being said, that's why they get fired when the team starts losing, because they're accountable for it. But that's why they also get praised as manager of the year or stuff like this when their team wins. So sports ball, now I'll stay away from sports ball from now on.
Let me throw a quote out there. I don't know who said it. It's an unknown. Responsibility is the obligation to act, while accountability is the obligation to answer for an action.
There we go.
And I like that.
That encompasses everything we're just trying to say.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Leaders Cafe. Next week, who knows what we'll be talking about.
Yeah, okay, we're done. That was a great 6-minute episode of Leaders Cafe, and we'll be on. When you excuse me, coughing. When you're leading your team, right, and especially like the young interns that you have now. I say youngish interns that you have now. How do you expect them to have accountability or responsibility for what they're doing? Like, do you put those expectations out when you hire them, or is it something that you kind of figure out that they're able to do so?
No, we talk about projects during the onboarding process, and when I think they're settled in enough, I'll give them additional responsibility. And, we hold meetings weekly with everybody, and we check in where everyone's at with their progress. And at that point, we might, reallocate resources, people's time, etc., to help them accomplish the task that was set before them.
Is it your responsibility as a leader to ensure that your team members are tasked the right way?
Absolutely.
So is it their responsibility as a team member to tell you, hey, I feel uncomfortable with this. I need additional training, or I don't know how to do this. I need to figure out, maybe I'm in the wrong spot.
I empower them to do so. And if they choose not to, I'm checking up on their progress and might identify the fact that resources might be misallocated.
So that's a very PC response.
Well, no, because at the end of the day, I'm accountable whether it's a win or a loss. And if they're not going to stand up and say, hey, I'm having trouble over here, for me to give them more resources, then it's my responsibility to identify, hey, this isn't moving as fast as it should be, or at the quality it should be. So what's going on here? Let's find out what the issue is and reallocate those assets so it can be accomplished on time to a quality standard that we expect.
So working for the government, excuse me, working for the government, you are inherently accountable to the elected officials as representation of the citizenry of the jurisdiction that you're in. So I guess technically to the citizens of the city or jurisdiction you're working for. As a business that's publicly owned, you are accountable to the board, which is accountable to the shareholders. As a small business, outside of your wife, who are you accountable to?
Myself. The goals that I've set forth for the business. I mean, and that's the thing. When you think of a government employee, my mind automatically goes to the DMV. And we've all had our horror stories dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles or whatever it may be called in your state. It's poor customer service, it's attitude, it's hurry up and wait. It's just this grind. And, as an organization, a service organization, that's appalling. Why is that acceptable?
That's a great analogy. That's probably one of the best um, researched. I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. I can't stop popping in my head. I'm having a busy morning, so my head's kind of not straight today. It's the best comparison. That's what I was looking for. The best comparison research that's been done with the California DMV to the AAA, because AAA California, I don't know if this is in every state, has some DMV functions it can produce. And people have done this comparison study to the overall customer satisfaction of people going into AAA DMV compared to the state-run DMV. And AAA does it faster, more efficiently, friendlier. All these things go through there, where the state DMV fails on all those data points.
I mean, let's take that back. When I go to AAA, I don't have an issue finding parking. I'm not waiting in a line to even enter the building. I'm directed exactly to the window or windows that are going to help me depending on what I need. I'm quickly called. It's a nice, comfortable place to be while I'm waiting. Restrooms are readily available. There's comfortable seating, not that hard plastic stuff. You go to the DMV, I've had to park 5 blocks away because there was no parking and walk 5 blocks to get there. No big deal, but sucks. Time suck. Then I've had to wait in a line 50 plus deep to even get in the building, so I could be directed to take a number depending on which area I needed to go. And then you're cramped. Kids are running around. It's this
dirty
government, plain wall. Just it's not pleasant. And then you get up and have attitude. Todd, we've talked about the issue I had where I had to explain the DMV rules to the DMV person, escalate it to a supervisor, escalate it to a manager to take care of a problem that's in their rule book. The clerk was unsure what they should do, but it's black and white.
And I want to get into this. We're not bashing DMV right here. We're talking about the process, right? And because go back to the whole rulebook thing, it's going to be lack of training, or maybe even in the employee's part, do they not care, right? Because there's and so now I want to go to the third part of it too, is maybe you're saying, okay, if you to use AAA DMV, you have to be a member, right? So you have to pay some sort. I think it's not very expensive, but you still have to be a member to be AAA. I've been a member of AAA longer than I've been alive. It's true. It says on my card, it says I've been a member of AAA for 56 years. So I at least find that kind of funny. So it says on Bailey's AAA card too, by the way, which kind of cracks me up. So the point is, it's been in the family. We've been using AAA for forever. But the point is on it is like you're paying for a service, so maybe the expectations are higher for those that are going into the AAA because they're already paying for a service than somebody who's getting the service for free. Well, I'm saying they don't deserve the same customer service, but I'm saying is there a different expectation level when you go into AAA compared to into a DMV? And this goes back to accountability and responsibility, because I think because you're paying, right, AAA feels more responsible for providing better customer service.
And that's where I was going to take this. We can vote with our feet and no longer pay AAA. We can walk away from their service if it sucks. California DMV, we can't. You go to the DMV expecting to be abused.
Especially, and for long lines.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, but that private company does their job much better, much more efficient, in a more comfortable environment. But you know what? I want to take this to another spin. Last night, Todd, you and I were at a networking event, and you told a story about a young lady that transitioned into a bigger, better, badder department.
Oh yeah.
But it was her customer service skills that made her known to you that she would be an awesome fit. We can teach her the job, but it's hard to teach that self-accountability and her personal responsibility to treat people as human and be kind and be nice and do her job efficiently. And that's
Absolutely.
an awesome example of responsibility and accountability. She was a rock star, still is.
Still is, yeah. And I want to tell you that, I mean, like, her work ethic at the coffee shop, right, was evident, above and beyond, right. And then when we brought her into our department and got her trained into the campus safety environment, her work ethic was above and beyond there too. So that's like that thing that you can't. I'll give you an example, another story. And so she was brand new, maybe a couple months on the job, and then she moved into night shift after training. And what she did is she realized that there's a safety issue because there were lights out throughout the campus, and because the maintenance guys are there during the daytime, they can't see if the lights are on. So she created a spreadsheet, went through each parking lot, numbered the poles, right, and made basically a map for university services to go through and fix all the lights that were out. And her argument to this was, this is a safety issue for students walking to their cars at night. You can't teach that. That's self-drive. You know what I mean? This is something that somebody takes personal responsibility to do so. And think about this. I don't know how many other campus safety officers throughout the year were working in that same condition, but didn't take the responsibility of counting light poles, making a spreadsheet so those lights could get fixed. And that's what we're talking. That's somebody. And now, by the way, she has moved up in the organization, and she's currently a sergeant in the organization. So the point about this is that, that personal responsibility was rewarded, right, through her actions. She was rewarded and promoted, and then now she leads the organization, or leads the organization.
So, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
The person who ran the department, did they take the foundations of what she started and implement it into daily, weekly checks?
Yeah. Yes.
Good.
Yeah. And then we grew that spreadsheet that she created when she numbered all the poles in the lots, has a checklist on there to see, is that parking lot checked now?
Right.
And so that's part of the responsibility. And the thing is like, you could go, talking about accountability and responsibility, you could go as the campus safety department, say, well, that's not our responsibility. It's the responsibility of university services to ensure that the lights are on, right? But instead of saying that, the department took that responsibility on, but the accountability still lies with university services to make sure that's done. So although the responsibility is on campus safety to ensure that the inspections are being done, the responsibility for fixing those things still lies upon the other department.
Right. It's kind of a shared responsibility though, right? Because it's campus safety's job to keep the campus safe and the student and faculty safe, So if those light bulbs don't get changed, then they need to, lean a little heavier on campus services in this instance.
So Michael Cordes says
they wouldn't be holding themselves accountable if they're like, yep, 5 lights are out next week, 5 lights are still out next week, 5 lights are still out, and not doing anything to rectify, even though it's not their responsibility to do the task.
So Michael Corda says, success of any major scale requires you to accept responsibility. And in the final analysis of one of the qualities of all successful people is to have the ability to take on the responsibility. And I think that Maria envisions or exudes that in her attitude.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. And that's just the harmony of an organization, And for example, in this case, the safety of your students is everybody's responsibility that's employed by that campus, right? But these two departments that aren't accountable to each other are pitching in and helping each other achieve that overall mission of keeping students and faculty safe.
So I want to kind of change direction here a little bit. And as we talked about at the beginning, when we hear about accountability, we always think of it in the negative, right? Oh man, that guy's accountable for that, and then he gets in trouble of some sort. So we've all seen team failures, and I'm going to twist this question a little bit for you. One is I want you to share a personal experience of when the team had a failure, you took accountability for it, but then turned it into a positive.
Wow, I wish I would have known this question was coming.
I just made it up on the fly. Sorry, Brian.
Awesome. We can take a large scale production in this instance, where we have separate audio, separate video tracks, we have to sync. It's a lengthy episode, so post production is going to be a cool 16 hours worth of work. And when I failed to check on the progress and that product gets delivered to me, if I don't vet that product 100% and deliver it to the client, then we're in a lot of trouble. There's nothing worse than lips and audio not syncing up. When you're trying to watch something, it's very distracting, and now you're no longer paying attention to the message or the content. And that's happened on some smaller scales. Now it's an easy fix, but we also now have a teachable moment to where everyone who edits video, we go through and do a final scrub. We think we're done. Let's final scrub. And then let's zoom out and make sure we have no hanging piece of audio or video that's going to make that 30-minute show an hour and 40 minutes because that little piece is sitting way out there. So making that into a teachable moment, going over a final scrub of the audio video and spot checking it, every 10, 15 minutes of play allowed us to check our own work before it moved to the next stage. How'd that do?
I did well. How do you turn that negative into a win for your client or for your team in the client size?
Well, I mean, from that point forward, it's never happened again. So they gained more trust in the end product, and they no longer want to see the product. We can just publish it when we say it's done. Does that make sense? So
absolutely.
That client has more time on their hands because they're not watching a 30-minute, 45-minute production to make sure they're 100% happy with every single frame.
So, I'm a big fan of Nicholas Taleb, the Sen Nicholas Taleb, if you want to go that way. And robustness, resiliency, and anti-fragility is something that I really see how we can bring things into this. And I think when you take a look at responsibility and accountability, that builds resilience within the team. And I think it builds robustness in the organization, which is creating an anti-fragile organization at the end of the day. Because if people are trying to turf responsibility or turf accountability, I actually think it's worse to turf accountability than it is to turf responsibility. But that's my own
Well, I mean, I think they're both bad. If an individual is not going to be responsible for their portion of it, and that supervisor, manager over them isn't going to hold them accountable, I mean, it's just going to break down, every step of the way.
Well, and what I meant by turf, that's a bad word to use, because last we talked about delegation before, and you can always delegate responsibility, but you can't delegate accountability. That's what I meant by that.
Okay.
No comment?
No, I mean, I think you can, if you're managing a supervisor who's managing employees, those employees need to be responsible for their piece of the pie. That supervisor needs to be responsible for his piece of the pie. That manager is overall responsible for everything, but that supervisor is holding his people accountable as well, because the manager gave him the project to be responsible for. So there is a level of accountability there.
Yes, but when you're going to get your ass chewed, right? If you're the leader, and you've done this as a leader of Marines too, right? When you got the gunny sergeant coming down your throat, you can't just go, well, I told, Lance Corporal Spocatelli to do this.
Right.
Not my fault.
Right.
He's not going to take that from you.
Right.
Right. And you could tell Lance Corporal Spocatelli, hey, man, you got fire watch. Right. But, I mean, if he fails to do his job, yeah, you're going to jump down his throat. But at the same time, gunny sergeant's going to come stick his boot up your dark
right.
spot.
But it's, just as it trickles downhill, so does the accountability. The gunny's overall accountable for the big piece. That squad leader is accountable for his piece. The team leaders are accountable for their pieces, so there's accountability along the way.
Right. But at the end of the day, right, whoever's at the top, that's why they always say it's lonely at the top, they get their head chopped off because they're the ones that are overall accountable for this situation.
And that's when it trickles downhill.
Right.
That gunny's going to scream at the staff. The staff's going to scream at the squad leaders. The squad leader's going to hold the team leaders, So there's accountability along the way. If you're in a leadership role, there's some sort of accountability.
True. That is true. What do you think drives people to want to start taking more responsibility in an organization and then eventually have the accountability for the organization?
Yeah, I think it really boils down to themselves as a person, as a human being, how they were raised. We were raised in a home to where you shouldn't have to be told to do something if it's right. As small as picking up a piece of trash on the street or on the sidewalk or whatnot. It's the right thing to do. It's your neighborhood. Take pride in it, put it away. So I've always grown up. We've talked on this show before, leave it better than we found it, and that was just ingrained in me as a youngster. And I've ingrained it in my daughter, hopefully she's not as militant about it as I am. However, it's a personal drive. Some people want more. Others are happy with the piece that they have. And they don't want additional responsibility because they're happy where they're at in station, in life, in whatever. And those people are needed just as much as the individual that wants more. It doesn't matter what more is, and what more is can change from time to time. We've talked about a past employer where I went in to do job A. Immediately day one, they told me I had to do job B and then I could do job A. And then it went to job C before I could do job A. At that point, I said, look, throw me in job X because I'm obviously not going to get to do what I was hired to do. And I want to chase this squirrel, and I was afforded the opportunity and I loved it. And it was that it was nothing but internal motivation and dedication to do my job well, to bring money in. And it was commission only.
And does that create um, personal growth for you or for individuals when they have that attitude?
Absolutely. You can have the attitude, but if you don't have the drive and motivation to at least stay current with technology, industry standards, you're going to fail. You know, I can want to be an astronaut, but if I'm not willing to do the work to become an astronaut, that want's going to fall on deaf ears. So I know we're kind of tiptoeing into next week's episode, but if you're the person with that want for more and you always want what's next, you have to be a consummate learner.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Especially in today's world with tech, there's new technologies that have made my job, my team's job easier because I can upload a file and 2 button clicks remove filler words.
Yeah.
And it's just, I no longer have to listen to every single second to do that portion of a job. But if we weren't up on that,
I want to bring that back to a second, just so people can really understand the time savings that created when Brian and I first started doing podcasting, about 7 years ago now. And literally, I just said right. We would go through, or I would go through, and look for these ums, and I learned what it looked like on the WAV file. It's like a little mountain, little mountain, and I would go through cut, cut all those ums out, and yeah, I mean, so this product that you're talking about.
I can remember one time where we actually counted the ums in a 30-minute show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we have to do what we can to curve this. Don't feel like you have to say something. It's okay to stop, think, and then speak without going, well, then, the other day, we don't have to fill that time. It's easier to remove a long period of time than it is identifying all these ums throughout.
It's funny because I've learned over the years of different people that we worked with, their filler words as much as because, so. But my point about this is we're not talking about video production or audio production, but it's the technology to be able to reduce that work is unbelievable, and the ability to get. I mean, with what we do on Substack, one push of a button, I have show transcripts up.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. If you're an okay editor, you're going to spend about 2 minutes per minute of audio. We'll just keep the math simple. So if there's a 30-minute show, you're going to spend about an hour editing it. With these new tools, I can take a 35-minute show, remove filler words, remove long pauses, and it's now 25 minutes long. And it took me a minute to do that. So I immediately reduce the amount of work I have to do by relying on technology. And if something sounds funky, let me go to the original file and see what went on here. So I can still vet what AI did and fix it if need be. But
how do we turn this back into responsibility and accountability?
You know what? As a manager, supervisor, if you're that employee that wants more, you need to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in your industry, because you can bring something to the table. Todd, you and I have always exchanged, check this piece of software out, check this tool out. Oh my gosh, look at this new process this tool now offers because of an update. And we're constantly throwing stuff back and forth at each other to help each other. So that brings this talk back into community, right? If you are having a meeting like the accountables that we belong to, but peer to peer, you're discussing your failures, your wins, new revelations, new tools. You're just going to be that much better because the collective we is making everybody stronger.
I want to get into this for a couple seconds, and I know we're getting closer to the end here. But we talk about accountability to ourselves, accountability to our life partners, spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever you have, to our business partners. So we went through all that, right? But when we have the accountability group that we're both in, and we meet, and we go, okay, what are your losses for the week? How do you listen? And sometimes I get there, and I'll even pick on myself. Sometimes you get there and you just go, this is my opportunity, not even consciously, it's a subconscious thing. And it just turns into just being able to just complain, right? Oh my God, the traffic was bad, the weather was bad, my, whatever is this, my dog pooped in the yard and I had to clean it, whatever the complaints that you have, right? How do you turn an accountability session like that with, say, a team? Say you want to create a team accountability group. How do you create that into something that's not just a bitch session, that becomes something that's a little bit more productive?
Discussing losses or troubles, let's just call them, in our group is meant so others can go, oh, I've dealt with that. This is how I dealt with that, hoping to improve their process of dealing with it. So we're kind of coaching down, if you will, to the speaker. So whoever's sharing is going to absorb the solutions that other people may have implemented to reduce the pain that they're feeling right now. But when somebody jumps on and just starts complaining, that moderator just needs to go, hey, this, you're complaining, you're not being constructive. You're not saying anything where we can offer a possible solution based on our experience, and it can be hard to do. I do not like listening to whiners. Every job that I've had where I've supervised people, they've quickly learned if you come to me with a complaint, it better be accompanied by a potential solution. Because if you're just coming to me to complain, go to the bar after work, have a beer, and bitch to the bartender.
That's the Marine Corps way.
If you want to come with an issue and a potential solution, that's what we're here for. We're here to make it bigger, better, faster, stronger. We're not here to cry on each other's shoulders. And there's no time for whiners. If you're that person that has that drive, you can be hard on yourself and you can stumble and you can go beat yourself up, but you're quickly going to recover and you're quickly going to identify problems to help get you over that hurdle. And you're going to start firing away at those problems or identified problems until you overcome it, because it's your personal drive. It's
personal
your dedication to that.
Personal accountability and personal responsibility for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, getting here close to the end. I don't have any more questions for you, man.
I wish I had some questions for you. You know what, Todd? Why don't we talk really quick? We'll get off the DMV. And when you're working for a municipality, county, state, federal government, and there's that mentality of, I only have to work this fast to get my job done and not get in trouble. And then somebody with that drive comes in and they're now bumping heads because of one can accomplish the work so much faster than the other, and the other is usually senior. Whose responsibility and who's held accountable for the cohesion of that team?
So the names have been changed to protect the innocent. I have a friend of mine who's going through that right now in an organization that they just received. They've been there less than a year, and their senior said, "Hey, the work will be here tomorrow. You don't have to speed it up. Take your time on it." And this person is saying, "Hey, I can get this done in a day, 2 days," and now they're stretching it out to 3 weeks because they don't want to be taxed. Not the person who was like the go getter, but the senior is like, "Hey, we're stretching this out for 3 weeks because we don't
I,
want to have more work put on our table."
I think I was on jury duty with that senior once.
I just say, I think there's also, you know, there's this attitude that sometimes comes into that you get punished for doing good work, and I've seen it happen.
In especially with government.
Yes.
You see it in the private sector, but it's easier to get around. It's easier to navigate that environment. Me as a business owner, I want to do my work in the highest quality possible in the fastest amount of time so I can move on to the next thing, so I can shorten my day, so I can dive into learning something new to make myself better tomorrow.
Although I have had advice from somebody that said, "Hey, I know you can do this right away, but do it and don't submit it in a
Yeah,
timely
but that's
manner."
I know exactly who you're talking about. And in my experience, that's been with that customer that is typically the low 20% of your customer base, and or a department that is just 100% disrespecting your time.
Right, right, right.
And I call it a tap on the nose, like you would a puppy. Back when I was a kid, you could, tap your puppy on the nose. Nowadays, you go to jail. But, you have to establish boundaries, right?
Mm,
And if you've got a month to complete a project, if the team has a month to complete a project, you get your portion done in week 1 and submit it. And then at the last minute, they're pushing back going, "Hey, can you add this?" They've had 3 weeks with it.
yeah,
So tapping them on the
yeah,
nose is important.
it definitely is.
Or
I get
dealing
what
with
you're
that
saying.
troubled customer. I've had customers in the past who will, "Hey, can you send me that price list?" "You mean the one I sent yesterday?" "Yeah, I can't find it." "Okay, I'll do that as soon as I can." And I usually wait. 9 times out of 10, within an hour, "Oh, I found it, thanks." They're just leaning on me to make their life easier, but they're putting all that burden on me. I now have to replicate what I did the day before because people don't know how to save files. People don't know how to categorize emails. And that type of behavior is a learning experience, in my opinion, for them. And we employ it in this office. We have customers that are like, "Hey, can you send that again?" Jump right on that.
Right.
Within a couple hours, we get a note, "Oh, I found it." Awesome. My favorite thing to do is to forward the email from yesterday that I sent to you.
I've done that before. Yeah,
Here it
I've done
is.
that before too. Oh man.
I mean, Todd,
All
you've
right,
worked
brother. Well,
you've worked public and corporate,
yeah.
and it seems like you had the same issues in both. The corporate environment you worked in was kind of a smaller community, though, so it's harder to push back and set boundaries in a very small team. So I guess I don't have a question for you.
Well, no, I know where you're kind of going with it, but well, no, because I mean, both you and I worked for the same organization that was a huge company,
Uh-huh.
a massive international company for that matter. Um, but even in some of that case, it was harder, especially with mission creep. And I learned, and I even did it at the other place. I've learned to ask that question, saying, "Is this the best use of my time?"
Uh-huh.
I will never say no because I'm letting, you know what I mean by that? I shouldn't say I'll never say no. I don't say no right away. because it doesn't want to come up with saying, "Hey, no, I'm not going to do it." Right? It's saying, "Is this the best use of my time?"
Right.
And letting the person who wants to task it out. Now, the other one, what I do now, I want to reverse it to myself for a minute. When I needed to task somebody, the first question I ask them is, especially if it's a multi-group, like in public sector for sure, is I would say to the person, say for instance, we'll pick on Joey for a minute, and say, Joey, say we're working for the same company, and I would go to Joey. Joey, are you tasked with anything right now by Brian? And if you would say, "Oh yeah, I am," I'd be like, "Okay, great." But if you would say no, I say, "Hey, I have a task for you to do,"
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want to create that conflict of two bosses, for instance, going and telling
Right.
him to do something,
Right.
because that's happened a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where somebody would come over to me and say, "Hey, this is a priority to get this done,"
Right.
and I would say, "Great, I understand it's a priority to get this done. I'm
Whose
also working on a
priority?
project." Right. I'm also working on a project right now that's a priority for this particular person. Who do you want me? Do you want me to tell them no? And I would rather have you send them an email to tell them that you're taking me off task to put me onto something else. Right.
Absolutely.
And then they'll go, "Oh, okay." And sometimes it's people punting. Right. And so, it's like, oh, they have a task they just want to get done. They want to get off their plate. So they're going to punt it to somebody else.
Yeah, but typically those are your weaker managers who have identified that person that'll get everything done and abuse them to the point to where that person gets burnt out and or wants to leave because all the work's getting dumped to him while their subordinates are sitting around doing nothing because they're the individual that'll get something done. We see
Right.
that all the time as well. But again, that's bad management, in my opinion.
So goes back to poor accountability in leadership.
Right.
All right, man. I think we're done.
Next week, what are we going to talk about, Todd?
We're definitely talking about continuous learning next week.
Awesome.
I'm glad you're prepared for that.
That I am.
You've been listening to Leaders Cafe, where today's brightest minds come together to share their insights and ideas. Leaders Cafe is an EMN media production. We're so grateful to have you join us. Our podcast is hosted by Todd DeVoe and Brian Colburn. Their insightful conversations and probing questions make every episode a journey worth embarking upon. Special thanks goes to our sound engineers, researchers, marketing team, and everyone who plays a role bringing Leaders Cafe to life. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcast. And if you enjoyed today's episodes, share it with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to help us grow. For more content, updates, and resources, visit our website and follow us on social media. Links are available in the episode description. For all of us here today at Leaders Cafe and EMN Media Production, thank you for tuning in. Keep leading, keep learning, and we'll see you at the next episode.